Hey, it's Chris. Crowdfunding Roundup. Your boy is back. Episode 237.4. You ready? A little bit from last week, a little bit from this past week, a little bit of everything. Plus, you know what? Start off with this. Alex from Board Game Co. reached out to me. He said, hey, I saw your comments regarding Gamefound from the news video earlier in the week. I was like, holy crap. I didn't realize you watched my stuff ever. But he said, I have some Gamefound statistics for you. Love to chat with you. So I'm going to chat with him. He's going to show me what they got for Gamefound Statistics because he was concerned that I was saying Gamefound games that come over from Kickstarter are all going down. Well, it's not what I was saying, but there's definitely been some down. There have definitely been some up, but he's going to show me some stats. So I'm really excited to see what he's got. And, you know, once I get some more information, maybe talk to you guys about it too. So backer kit, Gamefound, Kickstarter. Let's go. Gosh, how many videos do I actually start over on BackerKit? This might be the second video behind the one with Spirit Island Nature Incarnate, which reminds me, Game Nerds, finally, I don't know, like 6 months after I pre-ordered it, 4 or 5 months after it should have been out at retail in North America, finally shipped my order with Spirit Island Nature Incarnate with a little smaller, you know, indie card game cooperative that I don't even remember the name or how to pronounce it. It's like Scovier. I don't know. It looked interesting, so I decided to go for it. Moonrollers, Darkmatter, Moonrakers, double feature. Almost $500,000 for a roll and write. I mean, IV Studios has a very strong following, just like many of the other larger crowdfunding companies. And so this doesn't really surprise me. At the same time, it really does, because you have almost 5,000 backers at the time of me filming this. So it's not just a ton of people, I think, getting in at the previous Moonraker stuff, because, I mean, there probably is a fair amount of that, but it's a standalone push your luck dice rolling game for 2 to 5 players, anywhere 30 to 45 minutes, it states. What you're doing essentially here, besides the Moonrakers mini expansion, is you are rolling 5 dice around, and you're grabbing them from a pool of up to about 12 to begin with, and you're locking those dice in to crew members that you will be gradually trying to draft to your crew. As you draft them, you're going to be getting prestige points, which are the victory points. You're going to be getting hazard tokens, which are the negative potentially at the end, and you're also going to be potentially drafting the actual crew. The game goes on until you draft 1 crew of every color faction, or you have 3 of one kind, and then victory points are total up. But if you have the most of those hazard tokens, like I mentioned, then you actually lose out on some of your end game scoring altogether. So you have to be careful not to get too many of those, because it's going to come back to bite you. So the rulebook is on the page. What else do you need to know? Well, it's a pressure luck, because as you roll these dice, you have to be able to lock a die on a crew member. If you can't lock a die, then you bust. If you are the last person to fill a crew member's requirement, you get to hire the crew in the first place. $30, that's actually relatively better than I was expecting for a roll and write from IV Studios, with a premium deluxeification that they're often known for. So that's kind of cool. Mini expansion here is going to give you a way to modify other parts of the ship and the crew. Stretch goals, let's see, add up to 9 more cards. Oh, that's cool. So you're incentivized to get it from the mini expansion. Darkmatter, though, goes back to the original Moonrakers. And so, I mean, let's flip back for just a second here. The roll and write definitely plays on the original theme of the deck building aspect, where you have to contribute sharedly to complete objectives and quests, and so it very much takes the vibe of the original. So it might actually be just a much better, easier, straightforward version of Moonrakers if it wasn't your ilk before, because it's going to be a little bit less group dynamic, because you ultimately had to cooperate in a just agreement sense. So Darkmatter, though, is offering you a new little mini expansion here, powerless unless you combine them with a host of your crew. And they're going to give you different asymmetric special abilities, new ship parts, and some holographs, just like their previous campaigns did. So that's the other main reason to get it as a whole. Price point is fine, I guess, as long as you don't get all the other deluxeified add-ons, because just like when I talked about in the news video earlier in the week about the Cascadia roll and write's probably going to cost you like nearly $100 if you get both of them whenever they come out or whenever they crowdfund. That'd be my worry here too, right? You can get nickeled and dimed with the box, the sleeves, the tokens, the dice, and the dice tray. Because it doesn't look, I'm not going to tell you it doesn't look cool, but all of a sudden you're rolling rights $100+ as opposed to 30. So there's your Moonrakers, there's your Hollow Packs, there's your Titan Edition, and they do give you better deals on crowdfunding. So there's not wide available retail, but that's why we're talking about it. Moonrollers. There you go. Next up, Tiny Epic Cthulhu, which is really taking more of a Cthulhu Death May Die spin on things. Spin. You'll see why that's a little bit of a pun here in a minute. Almost 7,000 people, but only nearly $300,000. So the price point, though, for these is a lot smaller, and so we're kind of seeing how that's reflected there. But essentially what you're doing is you're going through two phases. Sort of the fill all the books of the Necronomicon phase is round one, and then second phase of the game of beat the old bad one before they can get, powered up, essentially. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking the bad guy phase by spinning a little spinner, doing the action, putting the bad guys in the location based on where that spinner ends up, and then taking up to 3 actions of your own in order to mitigate those things that the bad guy is doing, because they're going to be dropping tentacles down onto tracks, which are then also ultimately going to get put on the board spaces that you're going to be having to gather up to be able to use to get runes, as well as to be able to fill those pages of the Necronomicon like I just mentioned. You're going to be trying to close the portals in the second half before the great old one can grow all the way in strength and basically smush you all, just like in Cthulhu Death May Die. Then you also have 3 noted levels of play, and with the deluxified content of a little bit of the wooden components, you can also get a little mini expansion with player mats for the deluxe edition if you like. They give you a little overview of what the Cultist of the Shrine is going to do. It's going to move around between areas, and it's going to try and bring its own followers by translating the pages itself. Full rulebook here, and I really recommend you probably almost having to watch one of these videos, because as much as I appreciate this rulebook being on the page, this wheel of madness spinning, drawing tentacles, putting tentacles down, having tentacles come off the board, depending on if the track is accursed or not accursed, the spawn shambler, that is a tongue twister right there, is going to be putting them out, putting them down, consequences, and then you're taking your 3 actions where you're going to be moving around the board, getting away from Cthulhu, moving, collecting those tentacles, banishing, if you have the right colored tentacles, to the right color shamblers, as well as then using the actions of the locations you're in the first place. It runs you through exactly how you're going to be translating those. But this is, this is a little bit of a heftier read, and I think, you may actually have to watch one of the videos to get a better feel of it as a whole. Price point wise, it's fine. It's $25 for the original, $30 for the deluxe. The deluxe bundle is going to be $40. So with most of these, they're not a bad deal. I think most of the Tiny Epic series, especially in the last year or two, have been value-wise worth it on crowdfunding. Now, we don't see as much of the exclusivity right now that we've seen previously. And so I'm not sure if they're just getting away from that with this one as a whole. But you can also only check out a few previews that are on there. So take that for what you will. But maybe they're going a little different than they have previously in order to entice people, but also maybe not ultimately entice people as much. So we'll see. It's still doing great. A couple $100,000. It's still got some time left to go here, 16 days. So, is it probably going to approach 500,000 by the time it ends? Sure. Is this Cthulhu sort of saturation? Is it just disinterest? Or is it, as someone pointed out elsewhere, these games are getting a little more complex from the Tiny Epic series, which is in some ways, shapes and forms, good. At some ways and shapes and forms, I think people sometimes got into them because they were really more distilled down and more clean cut in terms of simplicity. So blessing curse that it gets away from that. Addresses criticisms on one side, it's going to get criticized the other way. You can't please everybody, I guess is the bottom line here. That's Tiny Epic Cthulhu. Next up, Party Panda Pirates. I'll have a video talking about this shortly. They sent me a prototype of this. Very rough prototype, mind you. Essentially what you got, this is little ship that you're going to be shooting out your characters to one of these islands. Then based on what island they're at, it's going to activate a little party game. I actually thought of this even before they said that it's kind of like Mario Party, essentially. They've got these little mini games, dexterity based, situational based, and you're just going to be manipulating them, and you're going to have a whole host of cards that is going to be available to you, carrying dice, moving dice in usual ways, flicking. It reminds me more of like Flick of Faith, only taken to like an nth degree and doing it a little bit differently as a whole with Draco Studios here. You can check out the rules over here. You can get a little free early bird, if you will, and you're getting a little bit of deluxification that goes along with it as well. So do you want that? Do you need that? I'll make the argument that miniatures are probably going to be completely unnecessary in this game, like most games, but it's going to give you a little bit better table presence, but it's going to be definitely a little bit more light if you're looking for this. And if you're not looking for light, definitely pass on this one. It's very, very light, but like I mentioned, 4 phases, 6 rounds. You're going around, you're predicting, actually, and this is the part I skipped over, and this is a little bit of Mario Party extension, if you will, a little bit further than what that does. is you get to predict whether or not you think someone's going to win or lose. You also get a little flicking at the beginning of shooting your little character out of this pirate ship to see if you can land it in the circle, which gets you extra bonus points. As you're going bonus point wise across this, you're going to be moving your point tracker over here up at the top of this little GIF here, right here that you can see, and that's going to get you treasure chests, which are going to get you additional victory points, and you can kind of see the rewards in this mini game after the mini game, if you will, and then the most chests are going to win at the end. They give you a whole bunch. I only actually have 6, but there's going to be a whole bunch of them as a whole to go with this game in the first place. And so it's just whether or not this super light party style, game is going to be for you in the first place. If it is, great. If it's not, nothing about this is going to change your mind. It's super light, folks. It's super party style. If that's what you like, go for it. I'm still hoping to get a copy of Dodo Dash here. Dodo's Riding Dinos is basically, like I said elsewhere, previously Mario Kart, and it's probably one of the most fun dexterity, family, kid, but also gamer style weight games that I played. And so Dodo Dash is just going to be more of a good thing. So if you don't have one of those, I'd highly recommend that, especially if you have kids, but even maybe if you don't, that might be a preferred sort of middling weight game that's not too light if this one is too light for you. So social goals, retailers, shipping, and the testable games, this stuff doesn't show up, again, just like we talked about with the previous Moonrollers and IV Studios, doesn't come up on the retail broad distribution publisher side of things as well. So you're really looking at getting a lot of their stuff here rather than elsewhere easily. So that's Party Panda Pirates. Next up, Star Realms Deluxe, the Colonial Collection. I have no idea. I feel like this is one of those where if you've already got it, you've already got it. And if you're not into it, this isn't going to change your mind. This is like almost, I feel like more for completionists, but more for completionists that haven't gotten a whole lot as well to begin with. And they say you're going to get all the foils, which you know me and how I'm going to talk about foils. But there's also this travel collection that they're offering. But the box, as they say, it's kind of travel, right? But it's kind of not. It's like 9 by 25, 3/4 of a foot by 2 feet. 2 feet. Like, that's big. It's awkwardly long, essentially. So I'm not sure if that really is actually a good travel thing. Yeah, it beats, trying to carry one of those super heavy Marvel Champions boxes or super heavy Aeon's End boxes when you've got like so much into one box. But 9 by 25 is still not like something easy to travel with as a whole, relativistically speaking. Because think about it, right? Like most boxes behind me, if that fit in the calyxes, they're like 12 by 12s, 12 by 12 by 3s, 12 by 12 by 4s, something along that line, 13 by 13s, something along that. Because usually the boxes, I know that because the boxes we ship in are usually 14 by 14 by 5s. So anyway, so they're slightly smaller than that. So that's what I'm looking at and going, okay. And they say, these foils, the picture of the foil down here is a pre-production photo. So it should already be in production very, very shortly. Like right here, actually, it says right here. All done. You're looking at actual pre-production proofs. Well, which is kind of strange because if the pre-production proofs are already done, it's not being delivered until November. Like basically a year away. So that's a long time for the rest of this stuff to have to get produced. Again, you're getting deluxe score dials, deluxe dividers. Do you need all that? Do you have any of this stuff already? So if you do, or you have any significant portion of it, I'm not really sure this is a campaign for you whatsoever because it's the all-in tier. It's the deluxe collection with sleeves. It concludes everything, including stunning foil versions of every card from all of these things. Okay. And then you have the Deluxe Colonial Edition. It gives you every card from all of these. So if you have some of these, there's not really a level to a la mode it, if you will. If you're not familiar with Star Realms in the first place, I mean, it's a deck builder head-to-head asymmetric game where you draft your cards, buy your cards from the middle with the currencies, and try to take out your opponent faster than they can take out you in a heavy take that style game. If this isn't your ilk, nothing on this page is going to change your mind. And I'd argue I'm actually surprised by them getting all of this in the first place, but people really like their foil promos and their deluxe storification boxes, I guess. So makes it pretty, but it also is going to cost you a pretty penny. Take that for what you will. There you go. Next up, we have Duel Shogi. This is from my friend Matsuo Yamamoto. And you may recall some of the other projects, you may not. They've done a couple other abstract style games like this, Jump Pico as well as the previously Sifra as well. Very clever little abstract style tile laying games in this sense. And what they've done here is they've taken the shogi that they did previously and they're making a dual smaller version of it. Instead of a 9x9 with 20 pieces, you have a 4x5 with 8 pieces. And the other thing that they've done, in case you're not familiar with shogi, is the kanji that's on this, you're not going to be familiar with it. You're not going to be able to read it. You're not going to be able to remember it. You're not going to be able to tell what it does. And that's the big problem of getting into shogi in the first place. But what they've done here is on the flip side, they've actually given you what the pieces actually do. So you can learn them that way as you're playing and telling you how you maneuver sort of like chess pieces in the first place. And so then you just go back and forth and either you capture the other person's king, moving your pieces across, capturing them, or utilizing them even to your own extent, because not only can you capture them, you can utilize other people's once you have them, or you get your king all the way across to their other side completely. That's it as a game. They give you their slight different rule setup here, different styles that you can play with in the first place. And the copy is just going to be more expensive because it's a little bit of a, indie designer ship from Japan copy of a game. But it's still not bad overall. It's $21 freaking dollars there for the pop-up one, $34 for the dual. Wood framed is only going to cost you $41. If you just want the pieces, it's going to be $55. This is one of those where this is the second or third shogi game I've seen on crowdfunding in the last 2 or 3 years that I'm tempted by. As someone who's really wanted to learn it, this is the way to potentially learn it. Because you don't have to remember, you can learn. And that's what you don't see with most traditional shogi sets if you're looking at picking it up outside of that area. So, Duel Shogi, there you go, love covering it. Then another quick, easy game, Fire Noodle Eating Champs, the dice game playing head-to-head in a real-time dice rolling game. Essentially, all you're doing is you're flipping up enough recipes of eating your noodles, and you're going to be basically rolling the dice to match the symbols when these cards are flipped over, because you can see how many dice you're going to need depending on the card in the first place. The tricky part is, though, if you roll the spicy icon, your dice get locked. And if all of your dice get locked, or enough of your dice get locked, the only way to unlock them is to take all of the dice from your cards that you've previously locked and not eaten and finished, and re-roll them all, potentially losing your progress. If you eat all of your bowls before the opponent, then you win. Rinse and repeat. That's the game in a nutshell right there. So one pack is going to cost you about $20 right now. 2 is going to cost you $35 or so. So that's it. That's the whole game in a nutshell. No pledge manager. Get it now or don't get it whatsoever, if I'm remembering correctly. Yep, right there. So quick, easy, real-time, dice rolling, chucking, fast take it game. Next up is Gudnak, tactical expandable card game. This one's slightly different. Not what you're initially expecting based off of this. This is not a TCG. It's deck customization, deck building, if you will. And they actually lay out some very formulaic ways to build your deck. You need to have this number of level 1s, this number of level 2s, this number of level 3s. So they lay it out very explicitly what needs to be in each deck. You're playing these cards into your back row of a 3x3 grid. And as your characters meet on this grid, they attack each other as one of the 7 different actions that you can take on a turn-by-turn basis, and you get 2 actions per turn. Now, if they share a characteristic or an attribute or a trait, you can stack one on top of the other. And then if it gets defeated, then if you want to move that, they all move together. Attack greater than defense, defender loses. Defense greater than attack, attacker's knocked out. Equal, they both get knocked out. So that's where the stack comes in. If you have a guy below, that top one gets destroyed, but then you can still get to move into their other stack. Now, you win if you have a card in front of their stronghold. At the end of this 3x3 grid here, essentially what you've got is you've got this one space that sits right here in front of the 3x3 grid on each side, the middle and the back row. If your opponent has a card there, then you have to potentially burn a card from the top of your deck during your turn. You are considered sieged. If you have a card there in your opponent's area on their turn and they are out of cards, that's how you win the game. And so there's only a limited number of cards. There you go. There's sieging, right? And that's it, essentially. The rules are actually very straightforward, very well put together. It's just some of the abilities really aren't known or seen anywhere. So that's really kind of what you're trying to figure out. $79 here is going to get you an expansion, and a stretch goal. $129 is going to throw a couple playmats and exclusive art cards on top of it. I mean, it seems quaint. They have a 4-player mode, which expands this grid up to 5x5. So if you want that, awesome. You can go with the pre-constructed as they have here, or they give you a little mix and match ability with some of these expansions getting thrown in. It's something you can look and see. I just don't know. This is one that I could see myself very easily being a miss if those decks aren't constructed well enough, or if there's an imbalance in the pre-constructs in the first place. So if you like this, it's going to give you sort of a middling ground between this and say Champions, where, you know, it's going to give you some customization, but not an overwhelming amount. But you can probably just go into it and play with it what you want in the beginning, and you'll probably be happy with it as well from that aspect. Is it going to stand the test of time? That's the thing I just don't really know, but it's got an appeal. It's simplistic enough that the overhead is going to be really easy to get to the table as a whole. So take that for what you will. Everybody's got a video down here. I didn't actually scroll that far down earlier, so take that for what you will. And shipping's going to be whatever. So there you go. Actually, surprisingly well at this point. So Gudnak, good job. Next up, Wildlife Dice. This one's ending before this video airs, but we'll talk about it anyway. Polish Wildlife Park. So you take 2 dice, one corresponds to the color, one corresponds to the terrain that you're doing. You have this little grid here, I believe, what is it, like a 6x6 grid, so 36 different squares. The only thing I don't get is that there's no rule book, so I can't tell exactly how these animals are being placed. Because when you're doing this, after you draw your terrain in whatever area you want, color and type of terrain, like I mentioned, based on the 2 dice previously, then you can allocate one of these animals. Well, the animals score completely differently. They have little icons next to them that allows you to figure out. This is the part that's tricky, right? The snake there is in an area that it says is open or available. Here is the term they use. Optionally invite an animal. And what this means is that at the end of the game, if you want to get these victory points on the end of the game here, you have to have a group of 4 blue touching it, not consecutively, like all around it, but a group of blue that is 4 total in size, one of the points touching it, 4 red, and a grouping of 3 mountains total. So, okay, that's in an open space, but then you go down here, you go see the frog is actually in a space where the terrain is as well. So that's the thing I just don't quite get. And they've got a bunch of little expansions here. Baby animals makes it easier. Territory, species offer variety. Yellowstone Park is a stretch goal. A couple add-ons, Serengeti, dinos, and Barrier Reef. I don't know how those are differing. I don't know how those points are going to be different. Do they add different terrains? Doesn't really say anything in that regard. Can animals go in everything? Can animals only go in certain ones that match what they would be in real life? No clue. So I'd like a little bit more on the page there, but they've got their other previous games offering as well, and it's rolling right, print and play. So there you go, $4,000, doing great actually, all things considered, so check it out. Now, Monarchs of Camelot. This is a very interesting one. I don't really quite get the game flow. The rulebook isn't too bad though either. They seem to have a relatively unique mechanism in terms of the action tableau system that you've got going on here, and they call it this progression mechanism. Essentially, so in this case, you're going to have the queen, and so you take a card that has like a split right down the middle. If you place it on the left, it offers the left-sided abilities. If you place it on the right, that matches the aesthetic on the right, then it gives you a different set of abilities. So when you get to 4 on either side, then you unlock like the special ultimate form of your main card, and you build this action tableau system on a turn-by-turn basis, because there's going to be actions that you can take on these cards. There's going to be instances, there's going to be passives, and there's going to be just a lot going on, because there's going to be journeying through locations, personal objectives, and secret quests, as well as scenarios that are going to be navigated on a round-by-round basis. There are 2 separate rounds that you're going to be doing, the choosing and then the action side of things. And you're going to be tracking up to your 4 stats in this tracking board here that not only determines victory points, as well as turn order, as well as other attributes that are going to be relevant to the actions you're going to be taking. The scenario cards that you're going to be drawing on a round-by-round basis, and then they run you through again what the unique tarot-sized decision cards are going to look like and how many you're going to get, and way too many as a whole. There's an expansion to go along with it. You have the Holy Grail version here, which includes the Knights of the Round Table edition plus the Eye of the Storm expansion. So more content as a whole. They run you through, again, the vaguest of the how to play right here, but what types of actions, how you're utilizing those, how much you can combo, that's what's not really clear on the page, or some specific examples would be really nice, and you're probably gonna have to watch a little bit of the video in order to get that, in a sense. Haven't hit any stretch goals because they're still to fund at this point. A few preview videos down here to help you out with it, and then a little bit more artwork and how the special characters are going to be involved. So that's it. I mean, I don't know. This is one of those where I go, why isn't this one funded? Why is the other things funded and why isn't this one funded? I have no idea. Is it because it's all preview videos nowadays? I mean, I don't really think so. We see that plenty of times where it's not the case, but it's one of those where I guess I wouldn't be surprised if it's another relaunch and, you know, succeed, even though this one is probably going to end up short with only a week left, but take that for what you will. Last up on Kickstarter here, another roll and write Way of the Samurai dueling game, if you will. This is a 2020 game that they're making a roll and write version of. And it runs you through basically what you're doing is you take 4 dice and you get to roll anywhere between 1 and 3 of them on a turn, depending on what color of the die is next to the round that you're in. A green die next to that round gets you 3 of those dice. Yellow gets 2, red gets 1. And you're going to be allocating those between several different columns on your player board: attack, defense, and concentration. And so when you're going off of that, the die that you do not use, the dice that you do not use of those 4, so 1, 2, and 3 respectively to the green, yellow, and red, is going to be the dice that are rolled and then the opponent, the AI, gets to utilize. And depending on what is rolled by the AI, then you go down through a column or a row system, and it tells you exactly what their stats are going to be in terms of their attack, defense, and concentration in that round. Concentration is actually stacked up, I believe, over several rounds. It's carried over. It does not disappear. Attack and defense is individually based in each round. So it's just, again, a simple, if my attack is greater than your defense, you take damage. If your defense isn't a certain level, then you're going to take damage from me when I do my turn as well. And that's about the game in a nutshell. There's 20 different pages or so scenarios that you can fight, I think is what I read with this game. And so it's just a bunch of dueling in this Sparrowbound notebook. You can download a demo. You can get some soundtrack with it as well. 16 euros is going to get you 1 and 29 for 2. So a few add-ons. I remember this. Colossus and Berserkers. I remember covering those previous ones. So, same designer. Okay, there you go. That's it. That's in a nutshell. Definitely not for me, but I know you solo junkies are going to be watching this one, and there you go. Another one for you. Next up is Colonial 1700 to 1800 here. We're taking the colonial powers, mostly over from Europe during that time period, setting it with a card-driven, tactically managed game where you are going through several different areas or fronts that you're having to try to control, bribe, negotiate, whatever you can do to basically conquer that area, including having coups. It's a tricky game to get the grasp of. The rulebook is the only way you're going to get a sense of this. There's not enough information on the page to actually run you through what is entailed. The rulebook here, as you can see, 32 pages, running you through the 8 different phases of the game as you're going along. Your tactic cards, your actions in your colonies, the various resources and actions that can be taken in the colonies respectively, the political phase, purchasing, moving, battle, supporting, and gathering up your income, as well as calculating your victory at the end based on the colonies that you control. And I wasn't kidding about the resources that you're going to be going through here, folks. These are all the types of goods that are available to you in this game as a whole. And I thought Maple Valley, that I played earlier this evening, had a lot of different types of goods. That is a ton. And here is all the other iconography. Now you can see that there's resources provided with the leader, as well as just permanent benefits provided by the colony as a whole. So as you scroll down here, it starts to run you through each of those different areas. Most colonies here allow you to get a special benefit if the leader is present. Then, like I mentioned, you move on to the political phase here. You're going to be having your monarchs and your chiefs. They're going to be, again, gaining roles on a lot of these phases in order to basically see what's going on. So if we scroll all the way down here, I'm skipping over a lot of this because it's very text heavy, very example heavy, and I can't give you a 1 to 2 minute summary version of it. So what do you need to know about the end game scoring? Well, you play over 5 rounds. You have secret objectives and victory points that are granted based on how many colonies you control, how many regions you control, how much trade you've done, how many friends you've made, and if you fulfilled your secret objectives in the first place. So this is definitely going to be a little bit different, especially with the rolling, especially with the phases. I don't have a clue who this is for. I know it clearly has an audience. The historical folks really love this as well. There's an early bird all in. There's also several different add-ons adding different nations as a whole. You have the Spanish, you have the Dutch, and you have the Portuguese right here if you want that, as well as offering different scenarios, as well as an AI system as well. So you can get a playmat. They've hit a bunch of stretch goals. Yes, I will put it out there that it's out there. That's about all I can tell you, though. Whether it's not, it's right for you. So there you go. That is the roundup now. 2 weeks into one. As you can see, December is kind of dipping down a little bit. Like, I'm not even sure the next couple Saturdays I'll put out an upcoming video because I feel like it would be mostly me talking about other stuff as well. Because there are literally, I think, like, I have half a dozen other games right now that I know of that are launching sometime in December. Dragon Bond Quest. There was another one, the Tsukiyomi, I believe, that miniature versus standee driven one from, was it Gray Fox or was it one of the other ones? I forget who put out that one, but that one's coming back, I think, for a third iteration over on Gamefound. But those are like two of the bigger ones, again, with Tiny Epic Cthulhu already launched. Like, those were some of the biggest ones of the month right there, if that tells you where December's at. So I sent out emails to tons of publishers, like 70 different publishers saying, hey, you don't know me, but I'm gathering my lists of 2024. You know, crowdfunding projects that are upcoming, crowdfunding projects that are delivering, upcoming releases retail-wise, upcoming whatever else you want to tell me about. So I'm going to be gathering that information as people send it back to me, and as I gather it elsewhere from the internets as well, to put out some of that this month in addition. So it's not just going to be the usual, but it's going to be, you know, some actually straight from the publisher side of things. I've had almost 20 respond to me at this point. So, right? Good stuff there. Otherwise, we'll have some reviews between now and the end of the month as well. I wasn't kidding there at the end. If you missed me talking about the iconography of that last game, I just played Maple Valley, and I'm going to have some interesting thoughts on that one. Tamashi is, you know, in the queue, as well as hopefully Stationfall, Voidfall, the falls of everything. Hopefully a Senjutsu, and we'll kind of see what else comes out between now and then as well. So, I don't know. Oh yeah, there's going to be a Marvel United one. I picked up the Spider-Geddon expansion. Yeah. So, there you go. That's all I got. By the way, in case you missed it, I hit 9K. I hit 9K, folks. We'll probably hit 9,100 before the end of the month. That's cool. I was crossing my fingers for 10K. I don't really care, though. I mean, 10K it's just one of those arbitrary magic numbers, right? It's completely arbitrary. Doesn't matter one bit whatsoever. Because I care about the views on the videos and you guys watching it rather than, like, subscriber count. Like, I'd always rather it be higher, but whatever at the same time. Because I'm not as fancy, I don't have as good at graphics, I don't have as good at production, and so I'm never going to be one of those that's just... Who cares, right? Less pressure on me, that's for sure. Do whatever I want then. Have a great day. See you around.